Good evening, welcome to Central News for Wednesday 23rd of October. I'm Amy Forrest. In today's news, a local mother of three is about to release her first book, which she hopes will better inform expecting mothers of the positives of home birth. Carla Sargent's book, Where the Heart Is, to be released on Labour Day, is a compilation of over 30 stories of home birth experiences from New Zealand women and the occasional home birth dad. Carla says in the medical world of birth that we currently face, many women and maternity caregivers seem to have lost touch with the reality that for the majority of women, giving birth is a natural and healthy part of life that does not require medical interference.
So rather than birth being the normal, natural, healthy life event that it most certainly is, it's sort of deemed to be some sort of an illness of sorts, or certainly something that requires medical assistance in order to be a safe event in a lot of people's minds.
Te Fund is holding a free concert tomorrow night in Tauranga with chart-topping singer-songwriter Julia Grace. The event is for the ladies with nibbles and drinks and will be held at the Change Point Church at 7:30 p.m. Julia Grace is a highly sought-after artist who has wowed audiences around the world with her unique voice and its raw strength. Now for our region's weather. Drizzle throughout the day for you tomorrow, Hamilton, with a high of 20 and a low of 12. And cloudy spells for you, Tauranga, with the odd morning shower, a high of 21 and a low of 13. Just ahead, robots on display. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. Two University of Waikato electronic engineering students are on the forefront of engineering design. Students Martin and Gordon have been working on their research project since April, and the final product has just featured at the Carter Holt Harvey Pulp and Paper Engineering Design Show. Harriet caught up with the boys to hear about their research project and how it came about.
So tell us about the research project that you've both been working on as part of your bachelor and what the criteria was.
So basically our research was into developing a stable walking pattern for a 12 degree of freedom biped robot. Our criteria was basically walking robot, get the robot walking, which was the main focus. It's sort of an open-ended project, so we could basically do whatever we wanted.
So how did you both work together to build your robot? Did you have different roles in the building process?
We kind of swapped and exchanged roles, but primarily my friend here focused on the software and I had to look into the hardware side of it. But we helped each other on both sides.
Basically we have to find out how to control the robot. So to do that, we had to know what angles were to be written into the servos. We split the 3D plane of our robot into two separate planes, the frontal plane and the sagittal plane. This controls the two separate coordinate system, this controls the coordinate system separately.
So tell us how you put this robot together to make it function.
Well, firstly we needed a testing platform, so we basically got a basic Lynx Motion Scout robot kit, which has a recommended design. It's the way the robot walks is basically bird-like, so that's their recommended design, and we altered that to resemble more of a human-like walking, human-like structure to do a human-like walk basically. So and then we started playing around with different microcontroller development boards. Basically, we needed something that was fast enough to do all the calculations in real time.
And how do you control the robot?
Like I said before, we split the 3D coordinate system of our robot into two planes. The frontal plane controls your X and Y coordinates, and your sagittal plane controls your X and Y coordinates, and the frontal plane controls your Y and Z coordinates. So to control the robot, we just change these three X, Y, Z coordinates, and that tells your robot to go to a certain position. In order to control a limb, you have a kinematic chain which is made up of
links and joints, and the joints interconnect the links. And every kinematic chain has what's called an end effector. And the end effector is usually the end point of your kinematic chain. So for example, my arm, the end effector will be the hand or this joint here. So basically what he was trying to explain was we split our 3D coordinate system into two planes, the frontal and the sagittal plane. And then in order to control the end effector of the robot's got two end effectors, the 2 feet. We basically gave it a trajectory equation, which is basically a predefined path that the foot follows. So we used a simple elliptical path. So the ellipse equation fed that into the inverse kinematics equations to get all our angles.
How did you source the materials that you used to make this robot?
So, like you were saying earlier, our robot's made from the Lynx Motion Scout Kit. So we just bought that directly from the supplier. And our robot is 12 degrees of freedom, so we just brought 12 servos. For the electronics, we bought a Arduino Mega 2560 development board, and he designed a shield for it. So that allowed us to plug our servos into that shield. So that way we can interface everything together.
Eventually, to replace the development board, we built a custom board with everything on it and took out all the stuff we didn't need, like extra GPIO pins. So we got a smaller microcontroller, extra unnecessary headers, all the unnecessary stuff we took out, and we ended up just having the USB programming interface, the microcontroller, and a switching power supply. And that was the final circuit board, which was lighter than the original development set we had.
And what has the reaction been like to your robot at the design show? Have people been quite impressed?
A lot of attention, eh?
Yeah, got quite a lot of attention. People are pretty impressed with what we did.
Have you guys been inspired by anything that you've seen?
Some of the mechanical engineering students have quite, because some of them did the biped robot as well, but they were focused more on redesigning the mechanical links. So it would have been nice to collaborate with them and try some of their designs out, because some of them were pretty good. Like there was one design that had all the servos in the hips, and basically each servo was attached to a pulley, and they used that to move the legs. So every joint had a pulley and a servo, but all the servos were on the hips of the robot, so the leg ended up being really light.
And what do you both hope to do when you graduate?
Get a job, yeah.
Yeah, work in the industry, try and absorb as much knowledge as possible.
For more information on the engineering at the University of Waikato, visit the website sci.waikato.ac.nz. Coming up next, Quarry Fest. Welcome back. Each year, Te Puna Quarry Park holds a Quarry Fest, which provides a great family day out. This year's event is to be held on the 3rd of November, and event organiser Ethel Harvey joins Harriet in studio to share what the festival is all about.
So can you tell us what is going to be happening at Quarry Fest?
Lots of things. We've got about 60 stall holders who have for sale all sorts of crafts and food and plants, jewellery, all sorts of things like that. For children, there's face painting and balloon making and that sort of thing. Abseiling for the adventurous. So if they want to go climbing up or down cliff sides, they can do that. That's all done with the Te Puna Venture Scouts oversee that. There'll be Devonshire teas. That's something that we're trialling. That's a new venture, really. We've trialled that once, and we've decided to go with that for the Quarry Fest because it was a huge success. Fresh scones and cream and jam, lovely. But there's also a musical program. We've got lots of really, really interesting performers coming in. the Waitaiko drummers, the Japanese drummers, are coming over from Hamilton. They played for us last year and they were so terrific. Everybody just loved them. So we've invited them back and they said yes, they'd love to come. So all sorts of really, really interesting things. It's a family day and we hope people will come and spend hours there. And it opens at 10 in the morning and closes about 4 in the afternoon. People start drifting off. But it's the sort of thing that you can spend the entire day at, just sitting and having a picnic lunch and listening to the entertainment, wandering around the stalls and so on. It's a good fun day.
Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. So can you tell us how long the event has been running?
Well, it was started about 10 years ago, but it's morphed a little bit since then. It was called the Spring Festival, and it was held in September, and the weather's a little bit less reliable in September than it is in November. So in 2006 it was rained out, and it was decided then to change it, to change the date and change the character of the event really. So it's now the first Sunday in November every year, and we can rely on the weather a little bit better then, and we've changed the name to the Quarry Fest.
And are there any sort of new features happening in this year's event?
Well, it's grown. Since 2006, it's grown enormously, and we're pretty much sticking to the formula. It's bigger, there are far more stall holders. As word gets out that it's a fun way to spend a Sunday, we've attracted more performers, we've attracted more stall holders and so on. And so we're pretty much going with what has worked successfully for us, apart from the Devonshire Teas, which is our new initiative really. But yes, pretty much steady as she goes, yes.
And how many organisers have you had working on this festival to bring it all together?
Well, there's a group of at least 30, probably a net pool of up to 50 volunteers who keep the Quarry Park going, who work every week. And from that little group of volunteers, there's a committee's been elected. And I'm not one of the volunteer workers, actually. I'm there in a clerical capacity, really. I help with the paperwork and the correspondence and with events like this. So I have to say at this stage that the volunteers who do that weekly work, keeping the Quarry Park looking brilliant, are just gold medalists. They're wonderful, wonderful people. Average age 74, so they're just wonderful. So out of that group, there's this smaller committee that actually works towards pulling these events together.
And what will the money raised go towards?
The money that the Quarry Park earns through the year with donations and other things is all very carefully managed for major projects and maintenance and plant buying and building and machinery and that sort of thing. But this Quarry Fest is easily the biggest revenue earner for the year. So it will be going towards those sorts of things, and we do have projects. Everybody has ideas about things that they would like to see developed in the Quarry Park. So it just gets bigger and bigger. There are 32 hectares of park, so the areas that haven't been developed are being developed with new pathways being put in and steps and stairs and safe access and features. One of the things that we do is we've bought a lot of sculptures over the years, really, really lovely garden sculptures from local sculptors and others elsewhere, and that's a bit of a feature. It's a very arty place to go to.
Yeah, so aside from the Quarry Fest, you also hold a couple of other events throughout the years. Can you tell us a bit more about those?
Well, a new initiative this year was Spring Fling. In a sense, it's slightly slotted into where the Spring Festival had been in September, and it's more of a garden expo. So that was a new event this year, and it didn't matter if the weather wasn't quite so clement, because gardeners don't care. They garden rain, hail or shine, especially the Quarry Park gardeners. And so that was a great success. What we did with that one was we brought garden retailers and specialists, pruners and orchid specialists and those sorts of people into the park for that day, and the public were able to buy plants and get advice and that sort of thing. So that was a new one, and that's where we trialled the Devonshire teas. Great success.
Remember, Quarry Fest will be held on the 3rd of November at the Te Puna Quarry Park. For more information about the event and the park, visit quarrypark.org.nz. Just ahead, we find out if there will be more pokie machines in Hamilton. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. A couple of months ago, we spoke with Cheryl Smith from the Problem Gambling Foundation of New Zealand and heard about her plans to change the way Hamilton does gambling by submitting to the council that they adopt a sinking lid policy. The submissions hearing was on August the 29th, and Harriet found out if there will be a true sinking lid policy in Hamilton.
So first of all, Cheryl, tell us how your submission went and how it was received.
It was a really interesting process appearing in front of the council, and I can understand why some people find it daunting. But the councillors were really interested in what we had to say and wanted to know more about why a sinking lid would be important, why a true sinking lid would be important, and what impact it would actually have on problem gambling. Yeah, so it was good. They had lots of questions.
So what was the update that you received recently from Hamilton City Council on gambling policy?
Yeah, I actually thought it would be a quick sort of a process, the decision process and the outcome, but we have just got it recently, and we have still got our sinking lid, but it has some amendments that mean that venues can relocate, or at least they can apply to council to relocate. Yeah, so not quite what we were looking for.
So you're not happy with that?
We're actually really quite disappointed because we had hundreds of submissions from the public saying, you know, they're not really wanting pokie machines and they're wanting less if possible, and it is a gradual process reducing them through a sinking lid. So yeah, it is disappointing. Only 16% of people actually use pokie machines, so there's an 84% that aren't using them, and they are most of our work in terms of problem gambling. They're causing most of the harm, so yeah.
Some people think that reducing the number of pokie machines won't actually go on to solve the problem, but rather just have a negative effect on the amount of grant funds available. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's more complicated than it sounds because not all of the grants are, not all of the money goes back as it should to the community anyway, and not necessarily to the community that you're in. And the sinking lid policy really is a very gradual reduction of numbers over time of pokie machines. So as that funding really gradually reduces, it gives an opportunity for people to look at, well, how will we fund ourselves? In perhaps a way that isn't quite so what I would call double-edged in terms of, you know, getting money from people with gambling problems in the first place.
There has also recently been a release about how the gambling helpline has been working. Can you share with us a bit about those results?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There was a lot in the press release. The gambling helpline does a really good service because sometimes, well, often actually, people, when they realise that they have a problem and they want to do something about it, the more immediate the help is available, the better it is in a way. And so the gambling helpline are 24/7, and so people can just ring them, and at least they've got somebody that they can talk with and set something up. So yeah, really good result. The only thing that I wasn't so in agreement with, I suppose, was the figures that they gave for problem gambling, because the figures that often the industry quotes are don't take into account all the regular suffering that people have when they have a gambling problem. So it kind of minimises the number that we're dealing with as well. So there's definitely more problem gambling than was indicated in that release, yeah.
Do you think that this is an effective way to deal with the issues surrounding problem gambling?
I think our clients know best, actually. So really good as a first approach, really good way of accessing help and getting some choices. Some people are fine on the phone and they find it good, you know, being able to be anonymous and talk with somebody. And some people really want face-to-face counselling, so that they get given that option as well once they've engaged with the gambling helpline, what's going to suit them best. And I think clients do know, you know, what's going to work best for them.
So New Zealand Community Trust is at the moment trialling facial recognition software to help identify problem gamblers. Do you think that that could be effective?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's great technology, innovative guys who have created it. I guess the thing is that it deals with, as you say, identified problem gamblers. So people who already have a problem, it's going to help for them when they go into a venue and try and access a machine with the data stream, rather than somebody recognising their face from a photograph behind the bar or somewhere. But it doesn't address the prevention of harm from problem gambling. It only is the sort of ambulance at the bottom of the cliff idea, if you like. But nonetheless, yeah, great technology.
A lot of people don't really understand the cycle of gambling and what the addiction is all about. Can you sort of explain for us what that cycle is and how people get so far down that track?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for people to understand is why are you addicted to something when you're not ingesting anything or you're not using a substance of any kind. And really, yeah, we develop a physiological dependence, so our body gets dependent on the behaviour that we're doing because of our brain chemistry, which sounds really complicated, but what it means is we get little doses of brain chemistry that are letting us know in a physical sense that we feel calmer and happier using the machine, especially when we've been under stress. So just like some other people with addiction problems with substances would use that substance, it's the behaviour that we actually get dependent on. It's quite complicated though, eh?
So how did your gambling awareness event go?
Well, that was really fun. I always like getting out and talking with the public, and heaps of people share their stories. Lots of people know somebody with a gambling issue, and it's good for them to be able to just chat sort of more informally about it. Also helps with them, finding that, who are they going to be talking with if they come and approach us face to face. And they can, of course, then share the information and free resources. We get to give away goodies and that kind of thing with their friends and family. And what I'm really hoping is that raises people's knowledge and awareness about it and helps people not become problem gamblers.
And what are your plans from this point going forward?
Yeah, lots of counselling work face-to-face is what the bulk of my work is. So that's working with people with gambling problems and the 5 to 10 people that are really close to them that get affected by their problem gambling. And also we'll continue with, trying to have a say everywhere we can about policy reviews, local councils and anything that's happening nationwide.
For help with gambling, visit the Problem Gambling Foundation of New Zealand website, pgfnz.org.nz. That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have any news, including your own video or photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Amy Forrest. Have a wonderful evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.